My name is Rolf Kittlitz. I'm one of the technical trainers here in this building. This is the classroom I normally teach out of because I specialize in chassis systems. So we've got the alignment rack, the tire balancing machine, and so forth. If I end up yelling at you, I'm going to apologize in advance because I'm used to speaking without a microphone. So I'm used to filling the room like I'm an opera singer. I come home from work and I'm yelling at my wife and she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Sorry, I've been presenting all day long. Got to tone it down and just talk." But we were kicking around ideas. What are we going to have for topics for Tech Tactics this year? And we looked at a few different things, and then we came up with the idea of, we've had 911 style center lock wheels since model year 2010 Turbo and GT3 came out. So we're 16 years into this. We're multiple generations into this. And there's a whole lot of hearsay. There's a whole lot of, well, I heard if you do this. And there's a whole lot of, we need to try and herd the cats and get everybody focused again. So that's what I'm going to do a presentation on today. Both the physical wheel locks themselves, the tools we need to service them, as well as tips and tricks for servicing them. So get ready, here we go. Okay, so again, we're going to go through the history, the tools, removing and installing according to the workshop manual, servicing the wheel locks for street driving, differences, servicing these same center wheel locks for track driving, correctly tightening the central bolt, as well as correctly tightening the central bolt in an emergency breakdown situation. How many people like to go for a summer tour, right? I mean, we make a GT3 touring. It has these wheels. Somebody might be driving. Maybe they live in Fargo, North Dakota. There's a Porsche Center there. Maybe they're heading to see family in Washington State. How are they getting there? They're driving across Montana. I've never been to Montana, but I've seen pictures. It's beautiful. You know how many Porsche Centers we have in Montana? Zero. You know how many Porsche Centers we have in North Dakota, aside from Fargo, which is all the way on the other side of the state? Also none. So what happens if I get a flat tire in the middle of Montana? Well, that's a really, really long time to wait for the flatbed to show up and a really, really long time to get to the right shop. So we do have, ever since we've had the 2010 style 911 center lock, we have an emergency tightening procedure. It's in the owner's manual. It's like, the ruby slippers in The Wizard of Oz. You've had the ability all along, you just didn't know it. Yep. Because we all know that if you want to keep something a secret, where do you write it down? In the owner's manual, right? Top secret. And then some other points of interest. Okay, and I have a note here. This does not apply to Carrera GT center lock wheels. This does not apply to 918 Spyder center lock wheels. This does not apply to any of our motorsport center lock wheels. Completely different thing. Not a single part crosses over except the name. And that doesn't usually bolt on very well. Okay, so here we go. Some history. We introduced the center lock or center bolt wheel on the 2010 997.2 generation cars, the Turbo S, so it's standard on the Turbo S, optional on the Turbo, and the GT3 and the GT3 RS. And these are right-hand thread only. That's the first major difference between the street 911 center locks and the race cars, or even the Carrera GT. Those cars, one bolt is right-hand thread, and the other side of the car, the bolt is a left-hand thread. The idea is, as you're on the track and driving high speed, everything has mass. Everything has momentum. And you get that, even the lightweight aluminum center bolt spinning and stomp on the brakes really hard, the bolt wants to keep moving. So one side of the car is a right-hand thread, the other side of the car is a left-hand thread in order to effectively self-tighten. It won't tend to shake itself loose. Part of the advantage of this car is they're only right-hand threads, so I can't forget which side of the car I'm on, and the style safety lock that's built in so that it cannot shake itself loose when correctly fitted. So we're going to talk about that too. Now, it's a bit funny. Who knows what the wheel bolt torque is on the Carrera GT? Anybody? No? Don't have it memorized? I don't either. 160 Newton meters would be our standard 5-bolt wheel bolt torque like on this GTS Targa here. But on the Carrera GT, it was 550 Newton meters. That's a lot. I don't know what it is in English units because...
406. 406.
Okay. I live...
Sounds great.
You guys are good at reading. How about that? Yeah, perfect example. I don't memorize the English units because I live in a metric world. I just speak the native unit. So when they brought out the 911 center lock, they're like, hey, it's only 500 Newton meters. We don't need a torque multiplier anymore. Yay! And then guys started tracking the car and they're like, you know what, if you're going to track it, bump up the torque to 550 Newton meters. So now we've equaled what the Carrera GT was. And then they decided, you know what, let's bump up the torque again. Now we tighten the center bolts to 600 Newton meters. Ironically, this is now tighter than the Carrera GT has been. And it almost negates redesigning the hubs, doesn't it? But you didn't hear that from me. You're going to erase that from YouTube, right? All right, and we have a separate locking mechanism. We have an early version from 2010 to 2014 and a late version starting with 2015 and moving forward. We'll get to the third gen in a minute. But these center bolt locking mechanisms, you can see we have a very, very fine spline tooth here, and this part is spring-loaded, and we have a very, very coarse large gap. That large gap engages with these 6, we'll say, that's a large gap, and those are medium-sized teeth. So when you insert it into the hub, there is quite a bit of slop, and that's on purpose. We want there to be a couple of degrees of rotation because the fine teeth in the spline, the fine splines here need to engage with a similar fine spline here so that should it begin to slightly loosen, the spring-loaded center lock safety, now I can rarely ever get them to line up, but if I ended up see, there we go. If I ended up spline on spline and the bolt began to loosen, it would self-engage, and then these large gaps and these medium-sized teeth in these large gaps would keep it from loosening any further. So this, gravity works. This spring-loaded, thank you, sir, spring-loaded safety lock is, well, it's just that, it's the safety lock. By the way, this one has been cleaned, but it did have anti-seize on it. I'm still very cautious. If you want to pass that around, help yourself. Make sure you drop it just like I did so you get the full experience. There's another view on what the teeth look like and how far inset they are with these very, very robust threads. Okay, now, history. We issued a recall campaign. This is the exact screenshot of it. The first round of them from the 2010 and 2011 model years. We issued a campaign, and we had all of the dealer technicians bring the cars in, pull the wheels off, do a thorough inspection, and replace a lot of parts if they showed any wear, and replace a lot of other parts. Every central bolt got replaced, and that's when we started raising the torque spec. This is also the same time we printed an additional page for the owner's manual that the technician would put in the owner's manual, talking about additional maintenance for racetrack driving. So with street driving, there is no real crazy special extra maintenance. Obviously, you want to keep everything in good shape, check it for rust and corrosion, but with street driving, it's good for the life of the car. How many of you drive on the track? A lot. Which lasts longer, your track tires or your street car tires? Silly question, right? Obviously the track tires go away. They're designed to be used, consumed, and they go away. Similarly, how long do wheel bearings last on the track? Good, not as long as a street car, right? By the time the professional race cars are done with a 24-hour Le Mans, the car is pretty much worn out, right? 3,000 miles of driving on a racetrack at Le Mans is gonna be like 100,000 miles of wear and tear on the car, and all in 24 hours. So track driving, especially considering what modern day road legal rain groove tires, how much grip we can make these days. Track driving puts extra wear and tear on the car. Starting with this recall notice, we say every 4,200 miles of racetrack driving. That means time on the track. If you're only racing club weekend events, it's gonna take a while to get to 4,000 miles of track driving, but they want these things done at these intervals of track driving. Again, street car driving, the part should be good for the life of the car unless something bad happens. Race car driving requires extra maintenance. So we've got that all written down because I can't remember it. Okay, so the new central bolt design came out with the 2014 991 GT3 and Turbo S, and we see pictures here of the new and improved version. That's actually the one that I'm passing around is what's in these photos. And at the same time, we got a new bolt, a new wrench socket. So the original 2010 cars had a bright silver with red interior socket in the trunk, and every Porsche Center got one of these auto shipped to them. Then with part of the redesign, they redesigned the wheel bolt wrench. You can see it does look different. You know, the shape of the center point here, the O-rings here versus there. Now, I've been told by the tool guy in Germany that if I only have the early tool, I can use it on the 2014 car. And if I only have the 2014 tool, I can use it on the early car. But I'm not brave enough to try it. So I tell the technicians, if you only have the early tool, buy the updated tool. If you only have the updated tool, normally we don't encourage people to use the tool in the trunk, but I know for a fact that the early tool fits the early hub, and I'm not brave enough to be the guy to find out otherwise. Call me scared if you want. And we got another one, I'll show you that later. So again, we redesigned the central bolt and locking mechanism for the launch of the 2021 992 Turbo S. That's the style that is mounted to that silver GTS and to the GT3 in the other room and to the GT3 RS in the other room. And yes, I'm putting on a rubber glove for a reason, because you've all been warned again. You stepped into the building, you've been infected. It's silver anti-seize paste. I don't know what's worse, rebuilding a CV joint with Omali grease or silver anti-seize. What's your preference, George? Yeah? It does. I still say, you know, like I halfway expect to see silver fingerprints all over the building because somebody's gonna pick up one of these lugs. I'm double gloving. Here's the tip that a wiser man than me once gave me. If you're rebuilding your CV joints, you're gonna rip a glove. It happens. After you've had rubber gloves on and your hands have sweated, you have to wait 20 minutes before you can slide the next rubber glove on. It will not slide over a sweaty hand. It just won't. So what I do, because a wiser man than me gave me the tip, I put on my expensive rubber gloves first, and then from the local box store, the cheap nitrile gloves, those are the ones that'll get ripped. I peel that one off, I slide the rubber glove will slide against the rubber glove beautifully, but you'll never be able to put it on a sweaty hand. So I always double glove. And this is the center bolt off of that car. Now, what's the new and improved bit? Well, the locking mechanism is now part of the center bolt that comes off the car. There's the threads, there's the conical area, and they redesigned the safety lock. If I don't do this, I'm going to put silver anti-seize on my clicker, and then the guy who uses the clicker this afternoon, you know, and so everybody listen. In one direction, nothing. In the other direction, it's got a ratchet mechanism built in, and it will only easily go in the tightened direction so that it will not back off on its own. Again, those lugs engage with what's inside the hub, and it cannot come loose driving on the road. Do you want me to pass this one around? No? Yeah. Where's your sense of adventure?
And so those two will be, you'll have two different ones for each car because they're counterclockwise and clockwise rotation.
On the 911, it's only right-hand thread, so one part number fits all four wheels. Good question, though. Okay, and with it, again, we got another new tool. And it's slightly redesigned again. This one, they sort of, for the machinists in the crowd, fly cut it, like you're trying to go with a bigger piston and cylinder kit on an air-cooled engine. And the teeth now have a sharper edge. They say it is easier to keep on the bolt when you're putting torque on it so it doesn't fall off. Because by the time I put all the torque on it from the big torque wrench, that could be bad. You'll notice there's also a sticker on that one. It's got the part number, so this is the exact same thing that comes in the trunk of the car. This is the spare part number. And notice the logo right here. That doesn't mean don't dry your hair with a hairdryer. That means do not use power tools. So, tools that we do want you to use is a conventional torque wrench. Notice it's big. We were using this torque wrench to do this in class, but some of our apprentices don't have as much experience as I do. And they just didn't weigh enough to use this torque wrench. So we now have this torque wrench. Give me a lever long enough and I can move the world, right? Love this thing. All right, so obviously we talked about the gloves. You need to wear rubber gloves. You're gonna need lots and lots of paper towels. I don't have a can of brake parts cleaner here, but that helps too. You're gonna need the correct lubricant. The current part number I have listed for you here, and I have a sample tube. It's available from your Porsche parts counter. The original, we've been using the Optimal, probably since Ferdinand Parker's Beetle. That got updated by Castrol, they make it for us, and that old part number, it's not necessarily bad, so if you have a tube of that, finish it up. But if you tried to order the old part number, the new one would show up. So Castrol has updated it and superseded it. Porsche has updated and superseded it. So this is the current approved lubricant for the center bolt wheels. You're gonna need a large torque wrench. You're also gonna need a breaker bar. How many of you like to loosen things with a torque wrench? How many of you have been told you should never loosen things with torque wrenches? Okay. So the funny thing, this particular model of torque wrench, the manufacturer says it's a breaker bar if you want it to be. This removable head, a lot of the German tools use this interchangeable head dimension in 3 sizes. So this one has a ratcheted head. I can use it in both directions. And from the manufacturer, you see the arrow on the handle. If I use this wrench in the direction of the arrow, it is a torque wrench. If I go against it, it's a breaker bar, and it does not hurt the torque wrench because of the style mechanism inside of it. So this is why it's our preferred recommended torque wrench for the job. I mean, it is an expensive wrench. Or you could buy 2 kind of expensive tools or 1 very expensive tool, your choice. Did you come to sabotage my video? Yeah. I knew it.
I know it works for him.
Of course. One thing that's not in the directions, but it is in the special tool cabinet, is this 3/4 drive extension, because anybody here have an RS? Very, very deep dish wheels. Having this extension helps you keep the paint on the fender, and the wrench and the fender don't get into an argument. And again, there's the close-up of it. This is in our factory special tool cabinets. Of course, we need the correct socket so we don't do any damage. All 3 versions of them, just pretty as they can be. And the center cap removal tool. Now, what happens if I use the center cap removal tool the wrong way? You know, there's a little notch. I'll get to that in a second, I guess. I forgot how my presentation goes. Last but not least, we got this bad boy. This one, how many of you use the aluminum wheel pins on the 5-bolt cars? This is the big honking version for the center bolt car, so you slide the wheel off and you don't drop the inner barrel of the wheel onto the ceramic disc or even the pretty paint on the caliper. I happen to know a guy who one time dropped the front wheel on the bright red brake caliper on a Carrera S. But at least it was on the driver's side, so the customer would see it 4 times a day, every day. I won't tell you his name, but his initials were Rolf Kittlitz.
Does that come in every car get one of those?
No, this is only a special tool. You're welcome to purchase anything. We love selling things, but it does not come for free with your car.
What's that special tool?
Say that again?
What does that special tool cost?
I don't know, because I don't deal with dollars and cents. I deal with torque values and procedures. But here's a close-up of the tool, 9794. It also has this extra long threaded rod. So if I need to push a stub axle out of a hub, that's what I use for that. That makes it very easy to service a car. And a small ratchet with a 3/4 drive adapter. Okay, so remove and installing wheel with the central bolt. We got our workshop manual here. Shows us a breakdown of the wrench, the bolt, the wheel, the hub, the 5 small drive pins, because we still have to apply torque to the wheel. So on the back side of the wheel, we have 15 holes to accept 5 drive pins. That means you could place the wheel on the hub anywhere in 15 locations, but they have to be there for transferring engine power torque as well as braking. It must be done with the wheels hanging freely, not even kissing the ground. Pre-73, only in the air. 73 and after, when we got the center hub, hub-centric flange mounting, we teach the technicians you can just have enough friction between the tire and the floor to keep it from rotating while you use your torque wrench, but you don't put the weight on the car onto the tire. But the center bolt wheels must be hanging freely to remove them and install them. Since we have 1 bolt, we want to make sure that the flange of the wheel and the flange of the hub are absolutely flat to each other. And if we have, think how sticky the tires are, if we have any friction laterally, you might click your torque wrench, but not be fully seated against the hub. Okay, now we get to the correct method. You put the hook in all the way in, past the sheet metal cover, past the plastic body, and then I've seen guys do it. They pull the hook, and they pull, and they pull, and finally the O-ring that's giving the friction lets go, and it goes across the shop and lands face down in a pile of gravel. That's the only way that happens, right? Murphy's Law. And then it's going to get scratched, and it's going to get ugly. So what the preferred method is, you get the tool in, then you place your thumb at 12 o'clock and simply invert the tool, and it will go boop, and it'll be right there. No muss, no fuss. Remember, if you get it wrong, the parts department will be happy to sell you replacement center caps. Okay. How many people knew that you spell clack with a K? Well, you do if you're a German. So when we're going to remove this, we put the wrench onto the center bolt, and it's got to go in until it makes a loud click or clack. Then you know it's fully seated. You're going to need another person to step on the brake pedal. Conventional cars, let me back up. 997 and 991 have vacuum brake boosters, right? So even with the engine off, there's still a lot of vacuum in there, so you don't need the engine running. The 992 generation, the regular cars have electric brake boosters, and you're probably going to want the engine running, because that way we'll let you use the electrical current on the brake booster. Whereas the GT3 still has a vacuum brake booster, so it doesn't need to be running. But you're going to want a person in there, and you're going to want brake assist, because it is a lot of torque. You insert the special tool when you get the wheel bolt out of the way, and then we inspect the surface. We need to be blemish-free, and we need to be bare metal. Notice this brand new factory wheel is bare metal on the backside, and also here where the cone goes, where the anti-seize goes. I have heard horror stories from the technicians at the Porsche centers. They come to my class and they say, yeah, somebody got their wheels painted. And they painted everything. And so then the technician says, we can't install that. It has to be bare metal. And then the guy got his, the little green, and he goes, and cuts grooves into the back of the wheel. And they're like, so you just bought a wheel. Or yeah, because he probably, if he painted all of one wheel, he painted all of four wheels. Exactly right. So we want to check it to make sure it's clean, free of scratches. It does say here, uniform wear marks and dark abrasion are normal. That happens over time, that's fine. Carefully remove the dirt from the components, and components that are worn down, porous, or have badly scratched surfaces must be replaced. Cool. And again, it should look, I don't know, people in the back can't see it, so I got a nice close-up of one of these wheels. It should look clean, uniform, and scratch-free. Same on the back side. 15 drive pin holes and additional speed holes? We'll call that weight savings, right? Yeah. It's amazing. As long as they drilled them all the same depth, they would be balancing, wouldn't they? But again, it's clean, it's perfectly flat, it's not scratched, it's not beat up, it's not dinged, it's not nicked. Okay. Now, you take the wheel bolt that's in wherever it is passing around the room, or the separate locking mechanism, and you make sure it's very springy, it does not hang up at all. If it hangs up, if it's stuck in there, you need a new one. This generation, whether it's the original 2010 or the 2014 redesign, you can buy just the wheel lock. The newest one that's attached to the wheel bolt, if the safety lock is damaged, you need a whole new everything because it's always one piece. And so it should look like that. Not like that. Notice it is recessed. That's the safety spline. If it's corroded, if it's grungy, if it's got gravel in there holding it, and it's recessed, that takes away your safety. I mean, granted, 600 Newton meters is going to keep the wheel on. But what if the guy didn't understand what torque value he's supposed to use? What if the guy estimated with a big breaker bar because he didn't have a torque wrench? What if the guy, who knows what, right? If the safety doesn't naturally spring back, there is a chance that it's not going to be safe. So it must spring back nicely. Also, yes, sir.
I've heard that. Do they time out over time if you use them on the track? I know on the street they don't time out. But is there a timeout time if you use them on the track?
So every generation car, the 997, the 991, and the 992, in the owner's manual of the car, as well as in our service, and I got a slide coming up of the service schedule. Each different car has its own mileage interval, so I can't quote one to be a blanket statement, but it is frequent service for track driving, but it's cumulative track miles, not street miles.
It's cute, but then they have to be replaced.
Well, we need to follow the service schedule. Some of it's servicing, some of it's replacing, some of it's inspecting. So again, I can't make a blanket statement, just got to follow the schedule. We need to twist the cone ring. If the cone ring feels like there's sand and debris in there, then we need to disassemble, clean, inspect, and lubricate. If it feels smooth, you do not need to do any extra work. In fact, if it feels smooth, it's not dragging, it's not crunchy, I'd let sleeping dogs lie. I'd put a fresh smear of anti-seize on the outside, like they want us to, but I wouldn't touch the lubricant that's inside as long as it's in good condition. If it takes an unbelievable amount of torque to loosen it, like somebody used a power tool and over-torqued it, or if it comes off too easy, that means it's been under-torqued. Maybe it had that shopping cart wheel wobble. We need to disassemble it and lubricate or inspect it and act accordingly. If it feels crunchy, like there's gravel inside, we need to disassemble it, clean it, and inspect it. But if it feels smooth, I mean, there will be drag from the grease, but if it feels smooth, I am not required to disassemble it, and I can move on with my life. And you're going to want a glove when you check for how smooth it is, or two. If this is not the case, follow these directions to disassemble the lock. Okay. They take it and they tap it onto a wooden surface. I don't want to disassemble my one that's dirty, but where is that clean one at the moment? Thank you, sir. By the way, round of applause for Tyler. He was the hand model in the screen showing how to do the center cap. So literally, the cone is held in with a circlip, and we just simply go and knock it apart. Just that easy. It comes apart really easy because there's no adhesion from the grease, but now we can see the central bolt itself has a flat surface with a machined, it's a very, very subtle step, but there's a machined step there. You can also see remnants of anti-seize. We have a flat washer that goes in the middle. The circlip that holds everything together. And the conical area, which has its own machine groove here, as well as 3 reserve bores for extra grease, as well as a gap for a little bit of spring compression, as well as it almost looks like a record groove all the way around to help distribute the grease. If I was smart, I took a picture of that. Hey, look, I took a picture of it. So that 5-point wobbly almost star helps to spread the grease around inside as you're torquing it down and the pieces are sliding relative to one another. to keep everything happy and clean. This is the 991 version, by the way, the 2014 version. Excuse me, just a second. They show us here when we disassemble it, clean it, inspect it, and then how much grease to apply to which surfaces. Again, of the new and improved Molube alloy paste. And then we reassemble it. So to answer your question, I picked a 2010 GT3. Again, the 2010 car has its service schedule, the 2014 car has its service schedule, and so forth and so on. But here's an excerpt from our workshop manual telling us at these intervals, I need to do these things. This is track driving. Street driving, drive it till the cows come home. Track driving, once I hit 4,200 miles, I need to do that. Track driving, 8,400 miles of track driving, I need to do this, and so on and so on. 16,000. Might take a while, but that'd be fun. 16,000 miles on the track. And again, similar schedule for all of the variants. You know, we have these available for new Panamera now, right? The center bolts. Cool. Refitting, of course. You want to drive with the wheels on the car. It's way better for the brake discs. I'm going to go over some key points. 600 Newton meters, hand tools only. And then we'll go over installing in an emergency. So they want us to take the tiniest amount of anti-seize and put it on the outside diameter of the hub. And they show a red line. It's not really a red line on the car, but they say, 10 to 20 millimeters wide, a stripe of anti-seize around the exterior of the hub. And then they also say, step 1.2, at the front of the inner thread, apply a pea-size amount. What I learned the first time they added that step to the directions was, if you do this pea-size amount of grease before you insert the tool, by the time you've done 4 hubs, you have a very well lubricated tool, but not hubs. That's what you're supposed to laugh at. That was funny, come on. So what I teach in class is we put this in, we slide the wheel on, then we pull this out, set it on the lift that I've already put down a paper towel on, by the way, because otherwise I'll end up with 4 silver rings, and that's the other brand. And then we put the pea-size amount on, and then we install the bolt. So there's a special tool ready to go on. And then we're going to tighten it to 600 Newton meters. Now, the procedure has recently changed. Historically, we've been 3-step tightening process. Tighten it to 600 Newton meters, loosen it either 60 degrees or 90 degrees, and then tighten it to 600 Newton meters a second time. So these directions are for the outgoing method. The new method is a single tightening procedure only, so it's once to 600 Newton meters, and that's it. With the 3-step tightening process, again, that's why I'm a big fan of this torque wrench, because I tighten it to 600 Newton meters, then I flip the head over, I loosen it 90 degrees, and then I flip the head over and I tighten it a second time to 600 Newton meters. If I don't have this torque wrench, that means I'm going to tighten it to 90, or tighten it to 600 Newton meters, set my torque wrench down, pick up my breaker bar, loosen it 90 degrees, set my breaker down, pick up my torque wrench, and tighten it a second time. That takes a lot of time, and I just think the ability of this torque wrench to work also as a breaker bar is a massive time saver for that. So why do we tighten it more than once? Who's ever rebuilt a cylinder head and lapped a valve in? Who's ever heard of lapping a valve in? So we're looking for that perfect concentric, everybody's happy, we're all getting along. That's what we're looking for with the 3-step tightening process. Now, what do? Again, I'm on my summertime tour, driving across this lovely continent, and I get a puncture. What am I gonna do? Well, I bet you there's a truck stop someplace in the middle of Montana, and I bet you they got 3/4 drive tools, but they are not torque wrenches, are they? So now what are we gonna do? And the guys are gonna be like, oh yeah, man, I can get it on there. No, 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 no. We don't want that. We're going to look in the workshop, or look in the owner's manual of the car. It's also in the workshop manual, but we're gonna look in the owner's manual of the car and see how to do this. Well, it says here, in the case of an emergency breakdown, you're going to tighten the wheel with a long lever using a lot of force. You know, so, okay, cool. And then you're going to loosen it 1/4 turn. You're backing off 90 degrees. So far, that's very close to the workshop manual. And then the third step is we get a normal size torque wrench, and we set it to 100 Newton meters, or 73.8 is what they translated it to this week. We set it to 100 Newton meters and tighten it then. And then we take a tire crayon, and there is a mark on the bolt, little arrowhead, that says 100 Newton meters. You put a mark on the wheel with a tire crayon, and you further twist the bolt until the stop icon lines up with your tire crayon mark. And what we've done is a base torque plus angle, and that is adequately tight to drive at road legal speeds to your next qualified workshop that has the correct torque wrench. And they're gonna loosen it and correctly torque it. I wouldn't drive it at Autobahn speeds like that. I wouldn't drive it on a racetrack like that. But to get the rest of the way across Montana, to get to Boise, Idaho, or Spokane to the nearest Porsche Center, or even go north to Winnipeg if you want, you'd be fine to drive a couple 100 miles that way if you had to at road legal speeds. Perfectly fine. Good? Cool.
Hey, Rolf.
If the tire went flat, how did you replate it?
So you probably have the
You got those dump kits in the trunk.
you probably have the self-sealing kit, and if it's a small puncture, it'll hold. And we all know that we don't recommend repairing tires for Porsche because it ruins the speed rating. So I would hope that the self-sealing glue would seal it. I'd also call ahead to the city where I'm heading, where I know there's a Porsche Center, Boise, Spokane, whatever. Hey, I'm inbound, order me a set of tires, I'll be there in 2 days. How long does it take to get tires from Tire Rack? Usually 2 days, so you'll probably arrive there about the same time the tires do. There was another question?
What's the shop flat rate to remove, disassemble, clean, reassemble, and reinstall all of those?
I would have to look it up. I don't have the labor memorized. Yes, sir.
Do cars come with a torque wrench?
No, none of our cars with center bolt wheels has a torque wrench, but they all have the socket.
So if you're traveling across Montana and you don't bring that chalk with you, or a ratchet, or your wife, they'll hold the brakes, you're still waiting in Montana for a bus.
I bet you the guy at the truck stop has a tire crayon, so you got that covered at least. The guy at the truck stop's got a pretty strong leg too. Yes, sir.
I was just wondering, what's the advantage of a clear lap wheel?
What's the advantage? It's coming up. Stay tuned. So again, this is a base torque of 100 Newton meters, or roughly 74 pound-feet, plus the additional angle torque, and it will be adequately tight to drive safely at road legal speeds.
Have you checked at the shop? What's it come up with? If you use that method, how close?
So here's the funny thing. I teach this because some truck stop on Montana is going to call a dealer. Hey, how do you do this? I'm reading the directions. It doesn't make sense. So all the techs need to know how to do this. And here's the funny thing. Depending on how much grease we have in on that day and how many French fries Jimmy ate at lunch, it'll usually come to within just 3 or 4 millimeters of the tire crayon mark on one side or the other. So it is truly adequately torqued, but it's an estimated torque.
And when you reinstall those little covers
Yep.
that have a crest on them,
You can't point that crest at the valve stem anymore?
Hold that thought. So to answer your question, what's the advantage of using a wheel with a central bolt? Because it seems like a big pain in the butt, doesn't it? Well, it does look cool, but that's not really an advantage. Again, Porsche says do not use power tools to remove and install wheels. But we've all seen TV shows where they just build cars with only half-inch thunder guns, right? What's going to happen if on that 5-bolt car, Skippy, the wonder idiot, takes his power tool and he does 15 ugga-duggas on the first nut or bolt? And then on the second one, because he's tightening in a star pattern because he cares, on the second bolt, he does 3 ugga-duggas. And then on the third bolt, he does 1 ugga-dugga. And on the fourth bolt, he does 10 ugga-duggas. And on the fifth bolt, he does 5 ugga-duggas. He's just warped the wheel and hub and brake assembly. And you might not notice it going straight down the road, but when you step on the brake pedal, you're going to feel that judder of the warped record brake disc. If I only have 1 bolt holding a perfectly flat hub to a perfectly flat hub, it will always be perfectly flat. And you cannot accidentally induce that record warped disc into the system. That's the technical advantage.
Just strictly to prevent some idiot from putting the 5 bolts back on wrong, that's got no other advantage?
That's the technical advantage for your 911 with center bolt wheels. Obviously, the guys on the racetrack, it's all about speed because they're using a $3,000 air tool with a nitrogen supply and regulators and all this stuff. They're also rebuilding those hubs every race event. That gets expensive. But those guys are looking for speed for pit stop time. For us, it's not going to have a brake judder induced by oddball torque on 5 lugs.
But if the guy torques it with the wheel on the ground, you're going to get that.
So don't torque it with the wheel on the ground.
I get that. I'm just saying, like, it's another variable that could be introduced.
Sure. And there's still plenty of other ways we could cause warping with corrosion and all kinds of things. Or maybe I'm changing brake discs and I drop the disc on the floor and tweak it. But all other things being equal, a flat hub and a flat hub with only 1 fastener in the middle will always pull it tight, perfectly flat. So that's the advantage. Now, tire mounting and balancing. What about when it's time for a new set of tires? Because again, summertime performance tires, they go away quickly. Cup tires for the track driving, they go away very quickly, so you're gonna need to know. Well, there is a special tool set. Mine's on order, hasn't shown up yet, otherwise I showed it to you. But here's a photograph of it. There's a special tool set just for center bolt wheels for 911s. I do happen to have the one small one on the tire balancer for the 918 wheel, because we did a set of those here one time. But this tool set for the mounting machine and for the balancing machine both work with the dimensions and the angle of the central bolt tapered hole so that it is nice and easy. We don't scratch the wheel. We guarantee it's centered on the balancer so we don't accidentally misbalance the tire. But that's this VAS special tool set. Sorry it's such a low res picture. That was a computer generated picture in like 2014, this big on my computer screen, and I blew it up this big. Sorry it's low res, but that's what it looks like clamping onto a balancing machine with that special tool set. What about for alignments? So there was a time when any car, your average car on earth, had steel wheels and hubcaps, right? So you'd get a front end alignment because the back axle was a stick axle, and they would take the alignment heads with these nasty steels, right? When it's steel wheels, nobody cares. I wouldn't want that on my aluminum wheels. So we have a special set of tools just for 5-bolt Porsche wheels that doesn't touch the pretty part of the wheel and guarantees the alignment flag is absolutely perfect to the wheel disc. But that only works on 5-lug tools. Well, we also have an additional one for center bolt wheels. And you can see we have this M8 thread on a bolt, and we have an M8 thread in the middle of our safety lock. And you see how perfectly flat machined that aluminum tool is. We make sure the wheel is clean. We don't want to trap a piece of sand in there. Make sure the tool is clean. And then that's how you mount the flags to the car. Took that photo right there. So we can do a wheel alignment. And that's as accurate as it's ever going to get because it is perfectly centered. It's perfectly flat to the wheel disc. And every Porsche Center got auto shipped those in 2014. So they're really, really nice tools. And they're pretty. That's a beautiful blue, isn't it? You can see in the crate here, certain models we actually have to additionally use a spacer and an extra long bolt, but that's in the directions. And there's the close-up. There we go. There's so I know we had a few questions along the way. Are there additional questions? Yes, sir.
What about using a torque multiplier? That torque was right.
So here's the funny thing. When the original Carrera GT came out back in 2004, 5, and 6, every Porsche Center that was set up to service a Carrera GT got issued a torque multiplier so that you could use a normal size wrench to achieve the 550 Newton meters of torque. However, once we brought out the latest 600 Newton meter torque spec on these 911 wheels, we issued a bulletin and said, quit using the torque multiplier. Only use that wrench now. And I started my mechanical life with air-cooled Beetles. And, you know, the big axle nut on the back axle, the gland nut holding the flywheel to the crankshaft. There are torque multipliers out there that you can bolt onto the flywheel so you can adequately torque it, and it does make life a lot easier. But here's the problem. Because it is a torque multiplier, it is also an error multiplier. If I have a very, very, very expensive torque wrench, like the one in our tool cabinet that costs like $3,000, that comes with a certificate, that is a 1% torque wrench. We call it the golden torque wrench because it costs like it's made out of gold. Then if I run it through a torque multiplier and it's a 5-to-1, what's my percentage of error now? Right. But what if I have a good quality torque wrench that's got a 5% error and I run it through a 5-to-1 torque multiplier? Now what's my... What if I go to the local discount tool store and buy a it's just as good torque wrench? You see where we're going? That's why we say don't use torque multipliers anymore, even on the Carrera GT that we originally said to use a torque multiplier on. Yes, sir.
Aftermarket wheels, are there anything that we should avoid or steer clear of if you're shopping for an aftermarket wheel that's a center lock?
So I'm not well versed in what's out there because I don't touch them. I only touch factory stuff. If the same thing I would say for any Porsche and wheel fitment. If it is from a quality, reputable manufacturer, like the ones who are making the wheels for us anyway, and it is of the correct dimensions, then you're down to your aesthetic choice of, I like the way that wheel looks. And if I know it's from, like if the Manti car next door, when I pulled the wheels off, I looked and they're marked from BBS. So guess what kind of money I got to spend to equal that quality, right? I got to buy BBS wheels to equal that quality. As long as it's from a good manufacturer and it's the correct dimensions, width, diameter, and offset, then it's down to your aesthetic choice. With one footnote, and I said this a couple years ago when we were talking about some things, engineers have told me that changing the spoke design of the wheel can enhance brake noise because the mass of the spoke is one of the things that we've tested to make sure that it doesn't sympathetically harmonize with any brake noise that we make. If you put on an aftermarket set of wheels, that's no longer accounted for, and you literally, we had a field technical manager. Had to do a dealer visit because customer had a legitimate brake squeal complaint, and pads didn't fix it, rotors didn't fix it, all kinds of things didn't fix it, but it had aftermarket wheels. And so literally they picked a used car off the lot, swapped it, the noise went away. Yep. It's one of those things, one of those 27 things on the, or more, on the list of whatever they're going to go through to test and certify the product before they fit it at the factory. But make sure they're quality wheels. I wouldn't go cheap on wheels, especially center bolt.
Are you able to say who makes the wheels for Porsche?
BBS is one of our suppliers. Guys know the classic 964 Turbo S. Those were made by Speedline. Fuchs, everybody knows 911 wheels. My 914 has the 4-cylinder Fuchs wheels. ATS, Mala, all very good wheel manufacturers that we've been partners with for years and years and years and years. Same with tires. You know, we were talking about that at dinner last night. The guys that'll put tons of, oh yeah, suspension this and brakes that and blah, 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 and then they cheap out on tires. Like, oh man, just forget all the other stuff. Just buy good tires. You'd be amazed how good the car is. Like, it's the only part of the car that should ever touch the road. Right? If your muffler touches the road, it's not a good day. If your roof touches the road, it's very much not a good day. Am I out of time?
Pretty much.
Pretty much. Well, folks, thank you.